already socially distant, but if you feel you want to come a little closer and still be distant, you're welcome to do so. But we're going to begin the service now. Thank you.
The Jewish people respond to death with words of heartbroken acceptance. In English, they mean, praised is the judge of truth, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. Praised is the judge of truth who chose this time and this way for us to say goodbye. Adonai Natan va'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. Adonai has given, now Adonai has taken. Praise be the name of our God. We just ripped a ribbon reminding us of the loss and the rip in the fabric of our lives. What was once whole and beautiful fabric now has a hole in it, and our response to loss is highly individual. Some of us may feel terrible pain, some may feel numb, some may feel a certain relief at the end of a painful time, some may feel guilt, or may feel a lump in the throat at words unsaid. Some may find it impossible to cry, and others will find it impossible to stop crying. Our tradition makes room for all expressions of grief. Our sages teach us that there is no wrong way to grieve, and they taught us to be gentle with our grieving. Abraham Joshua Heschel taught there are 3 ways to mourn. The first is to cry, the second is to grow silent, and the third is to transform sorrow into song. So whether you are crying or silent or transforming your sorrow into song, know that whatever you are feeling is exactly right. We are gathering kind of all over the place to remember Hank Adler and to join our hearts, but not our hands, together and give comfort and strength to his family. We can't all be in the sanctuary that Hank loved, filled with hundreds and hundreds of people whose lives he touched. That was how it should have been. But instead, we are virtually connected. Judaism has always taught a virtual connection. It's always told us that even if we are distant from the people in the ancient past and the people yet to come, we're connected. It tells us that even though we are not connected with all the people of Israel, we are virtually together. And so virtual connection indeed is something we understand. So it is that we stand here together to strengthen each other, especially Helene, his bride of 51 years, and Sharon, and David, and Jen, and Hank's grandchildren, Eliana and Abigail and Samuel, Isabella and Ashton, and even Jaden, a great-grandson. We mark the connection also of brothers and sisters, Paul, who is here, and Connie, who is virtually with us as well, and all the nieces and nephews and friends. We gather to recite psalms and prayers which link Hank's life with the millennial-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. Almost 3,000 years ago, the psalmist wrote a few lines of poetry that have endured throughout the ages. It is perhaps the best loved and most often repeated poem in the Western world. It's used most often at a time like this for comfort and stability. If you know the English and would like to join along, we say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to cast aside, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. To everything a season, a time, a turning into its opposite. To ask for one without the other is to ask for only half of life. And so at this moment of sadness, it's also tinged with victory, for we have dared to love, dared to lose, and dared to keep on living. And so we remember him. Esa enai el hechari me'ayin yavo ezri me'im Adonai osei shemayim va'aretz. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and your coming for all time. A traditional reading that is in our prayer book, and that Hank particularly liked. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of wind and in the chill of winter, we remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the sun, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we'll remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we'll remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we'll remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we'll remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. In the prophet Isaiah's great vision, we learn that God promised, Kol banayich limudei Adonai, v'rav shalom banayich. All of your children, banayich, will be taught of God, and great will be the peace of your banayich, your children. But as some of us may know, there are no vowels in the original scriptural text, and so our rabbis say, don't read banayich, your children, but rather bonayich, your builders. In other words, kol banayich limudei, when all of your children, your banayich, will be taught of the Lord, then great will be the peace of bonayich, your builders. This text always brought Hank Adler to my mind. He was the original builder of Temple Beth Or. He always reminded me that he was at my very first interview, sitting in the Steinharter's living room, where you all were deciding if this young kid rabbi was a match for the great building project that was about to come to reality. The Adlers and 34 families were building temple for the South Dayton community to create a Jewish home south of town, and Hank took every bit of the building project very seriously. Hank loved this new Temple Beth Or, and he was intricately involved in all of its construction. Not that he was a super observant Jew, not that he was a scholar who wanted to come to every single class. Rather, Hank was a builder both by trade and by temperament. He simply wanted to use his gifts to construct a place where his kids and other kids could learn to love Judaism, enjoy community, and be a part of something great. He was so proud that Sharon and David were a part of what he built. And even long after they had grown, he continued on his mission for other people's kids. Even in his advanced years, when so many of the other temple founders were no longer involved, Hank began our Senior Connection program. It wasn't just that he wanted programming for his own demographic, It was that he wanted to build something for all people and for all time. Something that would last. Something that would enhance our Temple family and benefit his own family. Hank and Helene always came to services these last years, and they never left until the last dish was washed and put away. It was Hank's building. That's what Hank did. He built. He built a home and a family with his beloved Helene, his wife of 51 years. It's no coincidence that the Hebrew word for home or house, bayit, can also mean spouse. Helene was Hank's bayit, his house, and Hank was Helene's bayit, his home, his partner for life, his life. Hank's dream was to build security for Helene. He wanted everything in place. He wanted his beloved never to need a thing. He wanted to take care of her for all time. Little did Hank realize that indeed it was Helene's quiet strength and confidence that built this framework of safety around him, and she was his comfort so that he could be home until he breathed his last. And this past year, Helene, with Sharon by her side, he was able to be in his bayit, in his house, with his bayit, with the love of his life. And this allowed Hank to stay in the comfort of his own home. Hank was so proud of his children. Sharon, who he sought to take care of so long, in the end, you came home and you took care of him. And David, who went off to become a builder in his own right of another Jewish congregation in Akron. Hank felt that his grandkids were happy members of a synagogue, for they were the very Banayich, the children who benefited from Bonayich, his building. All of his grandchildren and his great-grandchild are the legacy for whom he built. And so now it is up to all of us to pick up the tools that he left us to build a softer, kinder, and more gentle world, to care for the elders and the children in our midst, and to cherish God's creatures with the modest integrity, with the goodwill, with the happiness of spirit that Hank had, so that we can carry that into the world. Those are the qualities with which Hank Adler built his life, and if we continue building on and by his example, then indeed his memory will be a blessing. And now David will share some memories from the family.
I've had plenty of time to prepare for this, but I don't think that even when you try to prepare, you're quite ready. So yesterday, when I realized he had gone, I had to write a obituary for the office, just so people could know, so associates and employees would know what was happening and why I was gone. And I sitting there writing this obituary, and I realized I didn't know a ton about my dad. I was having a hard time coming up with what to put in this obituary. So I start going back to his childhood, to what I knew, and the family that I had, and everything along those lines. And I realized there's one word that came to my mind when it came to my dad. Very honorable. There's a lot for me in terms to live up to, because he was an honorable man. I hope that I can, in my own way, can honor his memory by following the same suit that he led for us. Now, also when I was writing this obituary, because I've never written one before, and it's not the one that won the Dayton paper, I was looking for examples, and one of them said, in lieu of flowers, make donations, and so I did not put this in the one here, but I was going to say, in lieu of flowers, make a donation. Hank would, in Hank's own words, he wanted a donation for a medal for being married to my mom for 51 years. Now, with that being funny and everything like that, that medal really belongs to my sister and my mother. This last 6 to 8 months have been 24/7 care from the two of them. The two of them being able to keep my father in that house and keep him as comfortable as possible was just amazing. It's a mitzvah. And the fact that they were able to do it and they could do it, I the words cannot say what that meant to me as an individual. And as my father has left us, the memories and the honor that he has done for our family and what he instilled in our community should live on. And this shouldn't be a loss. This should be a celebration of what Hank has done for us and our family. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you.
So the Hebrew word for a funeral, for a burial, is livaya, which means accompaniment. In life and death, no one wants to be alone, and so you all accompanied Hank to the next stage in his life. His family surrounded him till his very last breath, and indeed all of you are here, so he is not alone. We accompany Hank to his final resting place in the earth, and Jewish tradition also tells us he's not alone, for he has been gathered unto his people. So even as he is not alone, neither are you alone in mourning, for with this final act of caring for him, you begin to plant the seeds of memory, watered by the tears of loss. The dust returns to the earth as it was, the spirit returns to God who gave it. Only the house of the Spirit, which we now lay within the earth, the Spirit itself never dies. So we pray, receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Hank Adler. Grant him everlasting peace, which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen it, no ear has heard, no mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that pain which loss inflicts is a measure of the strength of your love, which is stronger than death. Though we cry with the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parents are near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, we commit all that is precious of ours to your keeping. Lech ki shalachacha Adonai. To Hank we say, go your way, for God has called you. Lech v'Adonai yichya imach. Go your way, and may God be with you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha, kavod Adonai ya'aspecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. We pray that his soul rests in peace. El melerachamim shochen b'amromim hamsei menucha nechal naha tachat kanfei hashechina b'ma'alot kirushim u'tehorim kizohar harakia mazhirim et nishma Aharon ben Avraham la'olamo ana ba'al harachamim hastirehu b'seiter kanafecha la'olamim utror b'tror hachayim et nishmato b'gan Eden tehi menuchato Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. God filled with mercy, dwelling in heaven's heights, bring proper rest beneath the enveloping sense of your divine presence amid all the holy and pure, protecting the soul of Hank Adler, whose soul has gone to its eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter him in your sheltering presence eternally and bind his soul among the living, that he may rest in peace. And now we turn to our Kaddish prayer, the transition from which the immediate shock of grief, ananut, turns to avelut, the resigned mourning process. This will be the first recitation in nearly a year-long ritual from which our clenched fists of anger will open into palms, spread in daily prayer, an open hand released of the soul of this beloved husband and father and grandfather and brother and friend. No cards. So those who know, please join in this prayer. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. V'alman divra kirute v'yamlich malchute. V'haye chon uvyome chon. Uvachaye dechol beit Yisrael. V'agala uvizman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shemei rabo mevarach leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei v'kudusha v'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Da'amiran v'ama v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort to this family and all the mourners in Israel. And now we will move on as we lower the casket and set it in place. Then the family and the principal mourners will have the opportunity to drop a bit of soil in the grave. The mitzvah of burying a loved one gives the family a last act of respect for the deceased. At the end of the day, we gently cover a child with blankets and tuck him or her in. At the end of a person's life, the last act we can do for him, an act of loving kindness, is to cover his coffin. This is the final deed we can do in his comfort and care. After that, God will care for him, and we will move to caring for one another.
Go around the other side too if you'd like to. If you don't want to touch the shovels, if you don't want to, you can just use your hands, grab a little bit with your hands, or use the shovel. Do it.
following our service. If others would like to participate in this mitzvah, we welcome you to do it. To our mourners, we say, Hamakom yenachem etchem betoch she'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all who have mourned in Zion and Jerusalem. We turn to one another, realizing that Hank's remains lie not in some burial place, but in every heart and every life who he's touched. We are grateful for the years we were privileged to share with him, years when he brought us so many pleasures and taught us so very much by his words and his example. And even though he has left our midst, we know he will never leave our hearts, where his memory will endure as a blessing. We say,
Amen.
our service is concluded.
If anybody would like to place earth, you're more than welcome to. As I say, if you don't want to touch the shovels, just grab a handful and throw it in if you'd like. When you get home, light it, burn for 7 days, and then you can throw it out. Just keep it somewhere very safe. Okay? And then you can know, thank you.
Can you get back to me?
Yes, sir. Oh, they'll come to you. Can you order them? They'll come. They're going to take about 10 days. It's lovely stuff. Whereas normally I would have to do, but it'll take about 10 days. We'll mail them to you. You know, this is such a good thing having this done. There's no way it's that you could do it if they don't have it.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine having to come in yesterday and start fixing and
well,
doing and
I'm struggling. Trying because when we did this was a couple of years ago. And then I said, well, hope you know,
yeah.
I don't want to be, I don't want, I don't want to specifically, I don't want to
Make that one phone call and it's done. You know I'm here and you can just do where you use the phone. Now I used to say I'm 7 numbers away, now I'm 10 numbers away, even if you're next door. Yeah. What's that? Yeah. I might do I was gonna say this is someone that's never
Come back my way, you make me nervous. Thank you so much for coming. Absolutely. I know we can always work so hard. Thank you so much.
Thank you.